to go.
Cool. Okay. Welcome back to another episode of Cameo Podcast. I'm sitting at Common Grounds. Luckily, we got some free coffee. I'm sitting across from Alvin, who I'll have him go through his normal thing of trying to teach me how to properly say his real name. You might have heard him already because he was chatting with Yasir on the podcast, which is live on this RSS feed. So go listen to that because I will reference it here and there because I didn't really know anything about you when Yasir said, "Hey, I got this interesting guy from Zimbabwe, and you should chat with him. He's been doing some cool stuff with broadcasting and on the radio with CBC and a few different things." So Alvin, can you start with trying to teach me how to say your name?
The correct pronunciation is Dairai.
Dairai?
Yes, sort of. You're close, actually. That's not too bad. The biggest, I think the challenge with it is the D. Because in English, D is da. Like when you see D, you have to pronounce a hard D. Whereas this one is Dairai. And so it takes a little bit of time. But like I'm sure once you wrap your head around the D part, over time it becomes a little easier to say.
Dairai. And where does Alvin come out of it?
Alvin is my middle name.
Oh, okay.
So my full name is Dairai Alvin Mutandiro. And so when people struggle to pronounce my first name, just to make things easier, I usually go for Alvin because, everybody can pronounce Alvin, right? Like any English speaking, Alvin's very easy. And then you think of Alvin and the Chipmunks, and it's perfect. So Alvin is my middle name.
Yeah, so it was Yasir who put me onto your radar, and I appreciate that. And really great conversation you had with Yasir about being international students, here in Kamloops and overcoming some challenges and how that all works. Now, out of curiosity, with Alvin, is Zimbabwe an English-speaking country?
Yeah, we're English speaking. Our traditional language is either Shona or Ndebele, but we're very good English speakers. You get taught how to speak English from a very young age. Most of the schools that you go to, the English is really good. Mm-hmm. So English is sort of our first language, but Shona is our traditional language.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you started off as a journalism major when you came to TRU.
Yeah.
You moved into communications, and from what I've heard and what I can hear from you right now, you're great at communicating. Your podcast with Yasir, very articulate, well-spoken, very thoughtful. And so you started in journalism. Can you explain why you moved to journalism, to communications, kind of like what you shared with me 5 minutes ago?
So when I came to TRU, I was in a Bachelor of Journalism. I'd always wanted to do, initially I wanted to do writing. That was really what my passion was, or my interest was when I came to TRU. I wanted to do writing. So I was like, you know what, let me get into journalism, let me do writing. But over time, during the journalism classes, I realized I enjoyed speaking, I enjoyed making speeches, and I also saw the market the way it is. You can still get employed as a writer, but you get more opportunities if you're into broadcasting, like radio, TV, that kind of thing, podcasting. There are more opportunities in that. People are more interested in that now, and content creation, right? And what we're doing right now, people like this more than just writing and just reading.
Well, yeah,
especially
different folks, different strokes, of course, right?
Like millennials, if you look at millennials, right? Millennials, to get their attention, even me, I know sometimes for people to get my attention, they have to do something that's gonna just be interesting and entertaining. And so for me, I thought communications would be that. I also thought communications had a wider scope. Mm-hmm. I could still do my journalism stuff. I could still do the writing. I could still do the broadcasting. But I could also learn about marketing. I could also learn about dealing with people, communicating with other human beings. And so I just thought with communications, I have a wider variety of things I can do. I could go, marketing, selling things, broadcasting, and I really like that part about it.
Mm-hmm. And what opportunities have you had? I understand you've gotten onto the radio a couple of times.
Yeah.
So what opportunities have you had with your communications exploration?
So I was lucky to do an internship with CBC last summer. So summer 2017, I did an internship with CBC. I actually got it through TRU. And I worked with a lot of the guys at CBC. They gave me a lot of advice. They told me how to interview people. You go out in the street, like downtown Kamloops. You go up to someone and you just ask them about a basic question. Sometimes it's about the weather. How do you like the weather right now? Or how do you like the smoke? Or sometimes it's about politics. At the time, the elections were going on in Kamloops. So I was asking people, what do you think about the elections? Who are you going for? What do you think about the results? That kind of thing. And I would take that stuff, that audio that I got back to the station at CBC. I would edit that audio, and then they'll put it on radio the next morning, and I would get feedback. If I did, if there was something I could do better, they would tell me, okay, Alvin, you can do this better, you can do that better. And it really helped me understand how radio works and how to actually produce content.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so it sounds like you've gotten much more formal training than myself, which I'm slightly jealous of. Are you kind of continuing on with that? Or are you and Yasir going to do something? What are your plans? Are you continuing to work on your radio voice?
Yeah, I'm continuing to work on the radio voice. I'm also, from what I've seen, and I'm just doing research, a lot of people, like, podcasting really has taken off. Like, podcasting is a thing. Radio is still important, but podcasting has really taken off. And I think that's something that I can enjoy. And I think with podcasting, there are less limitations. Mm-hmm. Like me and you, we can really talk about anything. Where sometimes with CBC, they might not be interested in covering certain topics for certain reasons. But I think with podcasting, there's more freedom. You can do whatever you want, and you can connect with people in a different way than, let's say, radio.
Totally.
And I think like younger generations with radio, we're not as big as much anymore. We like that content that we can access at any time. Like with this podcast, people can listen to it at any time. I mean, they can listen to it now, they can listen to it tomorrow, whatever, whenever they feel like listening to it. So I think with podcasting, there'll be more of an opportunity there. And I think it's an industry that has grown tremendously over the last few years.
Have you, because of the limitations that really aren't existing in podcasting, do you listen to any podcasts from back home or
most of the ones I listen are from here. I'm a bit of I'm a bit of an MMA fan. I don't know if you know the Joe Rogan experience. Yeah, so like I like his kind of podcast. I like a few other MMA podcasts, a lot of them, and I listen to a few podcasts here and there. Some of them comedians, some of them professional actors, inspirational kind of people, and I listen to quite a bit actually.
And awesome. Well, the limited stuff that I could find about you on your Facebook.
Yeah,
you did a Facebook Live about the Zimbabwe election, which obviously I don't know a wicked amount, but it doesn't sound like it's all too democratic.
No, not at the moment. Of course, I'm sure when you're looking for information on my Facebook, it wasn't an open book. Things weren't easily available. I tend to keep certain information of social media, but
I respect that a lot, though. A lot of respect for people who use social media consciously.
I don't know. Maybe in the line of work I want to go into, I might have to use it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But in terms of what you're saying about the election right now, like, is this? There's been one political party. So independence in Zimbabwe took place 1980.
Yeah.
And there's been sort of one political party in power since then. There was one ruler from 1980 until 2017, late 2017. And he actually didn't leave office by choice or by elections. He actually left office via a coup. Mm-hmm. Of course, it wasn't officially called a coup, because had it been called a coup, the UN would have had to intervene and they would have had to stop it. But it was a coup, and so he was taken out of power. But that same party with the same people still in power, just a different face, just a different leader. And so with elections, I can't 100% say they were rigged, because I don't have the evidence to say that. Totally. But there's suspicions.
Yes.
When you have your suspicions, but you don't have you don't really have the proof. So there's suspicions that they weren't fair elections, and it's been happening for years. I mean, you can go as far back as 2008, where the same party lost the election, the ruling party, full of army veterans and all those people that were part of the independence struggle, and that election was the result. They lost the election, and then they refused to accept it, and then the election a month later, and they won. So this kind of thing happens on a regular basis, so we're used to it.
Now, does the government over there kind of have control over the press, or is there?
They have complete control over most of the press. I mean, it's here you can have here you have freedom of press. Some press you can criticize leaders. Like if you wanted to criticize Justin Trudeau, no one would have an issue with you. Or if you wanted to criticize leaders of the NDP,
you got Andrew Scheer and Maxime Bernier doing some interesting stuff right now as well. So
if you wanted to criticize them, you could go for it, and no one would have a problem with you. Whereas back in Zimbabwe, if you wanted to take a shot at people like that, it would be, you could fear for your life, you'd fear for your job, you fear for your livelihood. So that's how it is.
Which kind of makes podcasting and social media in this age kind of liberating for the people to hopefully shine the light, but hopefully, they don't get the retribution side of things. Am I putting you or your family in any kind of...
No. I mean, no, I don't think I'm in any danger. I mean, it's just, I guess it is what it is, right? Like, but even podcasting hasn't taken off the way it's taken off here. Mm-hmm. Like here, podcasting has really taken off. It's a big thing, right? But back in Zimbabwe, people aren't as aware of it as they are here. And so it's still something that's growing, and I do agree with you that if we had something like that, it could give people freedom and allow people to express themselves. But I don't think people are aware of it enough yet to the point where it has an impact.
And something that I tried to make sure I brought your attention when we first started chatting on Facebook Messenger was Anchor.fm.
Yeah.
Right. So for anyone who's listening, it is a app that basically democratizes audio. It makes it very simple. Within 5 minutes, you've got a podcast live. It will take care of getting you on iTunes and Spotify. So if you're interested in making a podcast, try Anchor.fm. Send me your podcast. I want to listen. I really do. I want to learn a little bit about you. And you can do a little bit of research on Anchor as a company. They are a tech company, not a podcasting company. But, send it to me. Let me listen. I would love to listen. That's kind of why I started this podcast, was to get different perspectives from different people around Kamloops. Are you planning on staying kind of in Canada in Kamloops, or? Yeah,
I'm planning on staying in Canada, hopefully Kamloops for the next few years. Of course, it depends on employment, right? If you can, I hope to get a job in Kamloops, and if I get a job in Kamloops, I'll have to stay in Kamloops. And, maybe work here for a few years, and then after that, see what opportunities there are for me in Canada. Absolutely. After that. But, for now, it's, graduate, find a job, and then go from there.
One of the... Well, first of all, I hope you find a job. I think you'd be a wonderful addition to the Canadian citizenship if you ever go down that route to become a citizen, because we need lots of more intelligent people. We've got lots of dumb people in this country too. But where was I going to go with this? It's not often that I blank, but I wanted to chat with you about kind of your talk with Yasir, and you were chatting about how coming from, to understand your own words, a less developed company coming to a more developed country, and how people are more politically conservative, PC here. Yeah. Do you think that has kind of... What do you think of PC culture in Canada?
I think it's interesting. I think you have, because I've lived in Kamloops, I've noticed that you have a lot of people that are very conservative. They like things the way they are. They like things traditional. They don't really like things changing too much. And then you also have people that are very liberal. They're looking for change. They're looking for things to grow. They want the town to grow. They want things to change. And so I think it's just fascinating how the way people look at it, right? Some people... They feel safer and they feel more comfortable in things that aren't changed. Like if I grew up a certain way, for me, if that's comfortable, right, I want to stay in that. But for some people, if they grow up a certain way, they're not opposed to change and doing things differently. I can't speak for people in Vancouver because I haven't lived there enough. Mm-hmm. But I do feel when I go to a place like Vancouver, there is a little bit more of liberalism there than there is here. Here it feels a little more traditional, family values and that kind of thing. And that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. I actually think family values are good. But I think you just have a split between people and the way that they look at things. And certain people want change. Certain people are not comfortable with change. They like things the way that they are.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. Yeah. I think that's very tactful. But very telling of what Kamloops is and kind of how I see it. And I think a lot of people are kind of seeing the intersection of the old and the new.
But I mean, people are very welcoming, right? Since I've been here, like, you know, I don't know if it's maybe because it's a small town, but people were very welcoming. It didn't feel like, you know, when I first came, you know, everyone would say, hi, how you doing? You know, they might see you, they might not even know you, they'll just smile and be like, how are you doing? And I wasn't used to that because I grew up like in the city. And in the city, if you don't know someone, you usually don't smile at them. You don't wave at them. It's like, I don't know you. And if I know you, I'll wave at you and I'll smile at you. If I don't know you, I won't. And so coming here and everyone's waving at you and smiling at you was a totally different experience.
Was there something that shocked you when you came to Kamloops?
I'll just say, I mean, people just the niceness, the way people are. I'll say that's really what shocked me. I wasn't expecting people to be as nice as they were or as open and polite to me as people were.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was different.
Cool. Well, you know, we're at the 15-minute mark, which is usually where we wrap things up. But, you know, I'm kind of curious a little bit. Yeah. To pull back the curtain, because I was having a talk with a friend. Clement Ya, he's an artist.
Yeah.
And he always listens to the podcast, so if you're listening, thanks for listening, Clement. He likes when I do pull back the curtain and talk a little bit about my struggle with mental health, which has been a rather recent official development.
Yeah.
Is depression or mental health really of topic in Africa? Is it something that they talk about, or is it just is that kind of a developed country issue?
It's there, but I think the way people deal with it here is different to the way people deal with it back home or in Africa. I think in Africa it's sort of like if someone has a mental health issue, you know, they just maybe send them to like whatever mental health place. They don't really know about helping you and trying to get you better. Whereas here it's about if you got mental health issues, they can help you get better. Right? They can help you deal with those issues. Whereas in Africa, people don't really know how to deal with that yet. People are still getting to grips of how to deal with it. They think maybe if you have a mental illness, it's something that's permanent, that you can't heal or fix. Whereas here, people are looking for ways to deal with it and get people better. And, you know, they want everybody to live a good life here. Mm-hmm. And I think in Africa, people are still trying to figure out how to do that. And people aren't really aware of the fact that mental health is not a permanent thing. It's something that you can work on and improve on over time.
Interesting. Well, Dairai, did I say right?
Yeah.
So is there anything else you kind of want to share about yourself or talk about?
No, I mean, I've just like enjoyed my time in Kamloops, and I enjoyed my time in TRU thus far, right? Like, I just think podcasting, I enjoy podcasting. I think podcasting is good. I think it's always good for people to have like an exchange of ideas. Like if I was to bring my ideas and you to bring your ideas and we have like an exchange, I always think it's good for people to hear different points of views and the way people look at things. And like before we go, I was just curious to know, like for you, what really inspired you like to go into podcasting? What was like?
Well, you know, we don't really have a cap on time. That's one of the beautiful things about podcasts. So we can chat for as long as.
Oh, okay.
So you just flipped the tables on me, right? So you're gonna interview me now.
No, I thought I'd exceeded your time. So
no. We have lots of time. You know, I'm from Ontario, so and you know, there's a video of my wedding where my dad explains that basically I only share what I want to share, kind of like you. Yeah. And so with having like a daughter, like a baby, you know, I thought maybe audio would be a great safe way to kind of share, you know, the growth of her and what I'm going through to kind of send little podcasts, you know, even just personal clips to my family. Yeah. But because I'm very conscious of, you know, pictures and videos and what I do put out there, I'm okay with, but like, I don't want my daughter out there. You know what I mean?
No, I get that. You have to protect, you know, privacy and family values they have there.
Yeah. So like where I might be like completely off the wall online, my daughter needs to be able to make that decision herself. Yeah. So that's where, you know, buying a microphone started with, because I was also working a lot, 7 days a week. So I thought I could like record stories and then have her listen to them at like night. Yeah. You know, actually hear it from my voice like I was there. So that kind of just snowballed to like actually being slightly isolated but still listening to a lot of podcasts and getting different points of view and feeling like you're part of something greater. So I thought, well, Camels doesn't really have one, and if I'm feeling isolated, well, here's a way to kind of like force myself to get in front of someone and meet them face to face, share a coffee, share a conversation, and you know, learn a little bit from them, right? You know, I've also kind of liked the idea of learning the radio medium too, right? Because I think when you're on making a video or typing text or doing photography, right? Like it's very intentional what you put out there. You can edit and stuff, but since I don't really edit the podcast and it's actually my voice, right? Like what I say is what I stand by, and like there's a level of much more genuineness, I think, which is something I struggle with seeing in other people online, right? Which, you know, that's why I like the audio medium, and I'm running around like crazy, right? So like it's easier to put headphones on that, you know, and you know, just listen to some radio while, you know, I'm gardening or doing the dishes or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, like, I have a friend who always tells me, like, when he's driving, he just listens to, like, a podcast. He doesn't really listen to radio. He just listens to maybe one of his favorite podcasts, just plugs it in and just listens while he drives. And it just shows, you know, you can access it anywhere and everywhere. That's the beauty of it.
Totally. And, you know, we've grown up in a school system that really almost, regardless of your learning style, whether you're hands-on learner, you know, visual learner, you know, reading learner, whatever those learning styles are, we almost all get forced to learn through listening to a teacher, right? Like listening is one of the first skills they basically teach you in school, right? And so, you know, a couple years back, I realized, as much as I like to learn by doing stuff, I really do learn by just passively listening to something.
Yeah.
Right. And also to escape the escapism of stuff, right? To put the headphones on, right? Like the dark side of the content creation world is that we always feel like we need to be hyper connected. Yeah. Right. And so this is kind of my way to like remove myself from being hyper connected too, but still put something out there in the world, right? Like I'm just, you know, I put it here, right? And if people want to listen, they can go to it, right? But I don't need to go on all these other mediums, which, you know, ironically is part of my job working for a digital marketing agency, right? So it's like I live a very complete opposite lives, right? Like I'm either fully on or fully off, right? And so it's kind of like that weird balance of figuring out. And, you know, I think, you know, communications is an exciting thing because there's low barriers to entry.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think one thing you were saying is like with a podcast, sometimes you're right, you can feel like you're in a bubble. If you're doing like a podcast or anything, like I did a volunteer radio show on the school campus radio station, and you know you go in with your microphone and you put in like whatever, you plug it in, and it's like you're in your own world, right? Because you got the microphone, you can hear what you're saying, like you're just having a good time, and it's like you're having a conversation with the world. The world sometimes can have a conversation with you, but most times they can't. And so it's just like you're in your own world and just expressing your thoughts, and it's like you're in your own little comfort zone there when you're doing it.
Absolutely. But I also like the simplicity of my setup, right? Like it's completely mobile. It fits into my backpack. Yeah. Right.
You can
like
take it anywhere.
I take it anywhere. I go to coffee shops. You know, I get a couple eyes. You know, like okay, what are they doing? They're doing something a little different, right? But like. Yeah. You know, it's a really safe way to kind of share who you are, because I feel like with the world of content creation, sometimes you're just so almost forced to like put something out there and just and you're trying to drive likes and stuff. And the beauty of podcasting is no one actually knows what my listenership is or the downloads, right? Unless they have access to my host. Yeah. Right. So where I actually enjoy the conversations with people that I'm meeting, right? Going back to that, getting out and getting into the community and chatting with people, right? The validation of it, right? Like the idea of like, oh, I have this many downloads, like or this many likes or comments, right? Like they don't really know that, right? It's either they enjoy having a conversation with me or they don't. They don't. Yeah. It's a very binary way of judging success for me. I'm a very binary person, which is why I'm probably getting tested for possibly being bipolar. But you know that is what it is, right? But you know, I actually had a weird episode before I got here, and I was like, I'm gonna meet Alvin, and I'm gonna be like all messed up. But luckily you were running a little late. I cleaned myself up. You're a very friendly guy, and we had a good conversation.
Well, I mean, like, the truth is, like, everybody. I think everybody has their struggles, right? Like, we're all dealing with issues. And the good thing with you is you're very open about it. You don't try to hide it. Some people will try to hide that kind of thing. They don't want people to know that they're vulnerable, that they got these issues. And so I think it's good, that you're not afraid to share that. I think, and it's good for the listeners, because then they know, you're being authentic and you're being real, right? Because like with social media, like you were saying, people really like to hide their true selves. They like to show you like what they think you want to see, and they like to show you whatever will get them likes, but you don't really know how they truly are, like, behind the scenes, right?
Yeah, like, you can't hide the inflection in your voice.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you talked to me an hour ago, right, like, it would be obvious that, like, I probably wasn't really awesome, right? So, like, so it's strange when I look at my posts, and I'm very smart when it comes to, like, the words that I would write, like, because you could take 20 minutes to write 3 sentences, right?
Yeah.
But when you're actually having a conversation, you can now hear in my voice, is he doing well? Is he not doing well? What inflection he has, right? And I have a radio voice.
Yeah.
I'll admit to that, right?
Yeah.
But the authentic side of things comes in. Yeah, I'm a little bit braver behind a microphone. You put me in front of a video camera, that's a whole different medium that adds another layer that kind of removes some of the authenticity of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's something I guess it's something that just takes time to get comfortable around, like, because people are pushing for that, right? Like, videos now and video and podcasts, but I think it's something that takes time. I don't think it just happens. Like, I think some people, they prefer just the audio. Some people they like the video. So I think it's something that takes time and depends on your comfort level.
Totally, and I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, every talk show can be a podcast, but not every podcast can be a talk show.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Right? So, like, in the world of digital content, you can transform, a Facebook Live where, you and Yasir could have done a Facebook Live together and then rip the audio and put it on a podcast. Because, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to sit in front of a Facebook Live video for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But I can definitely listen to your audio if you ripped it, right? And now you're hitting 2 different mediums depending on how you want to be. But, the challenge that I have is like, well, I could have live streamed our conversation, but it probably wouldn't have reached this point if I did that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because now we're concerned with people adding their comments into it and lives. And are you familiar with Lewis Howes?
No, I'm not, unfortunately.
You should check out Lewis Howes. So, like, like, if you're a communication guy, so I'll go into a little rant on communication. Lewis Howes made a podcast and got really big. He was sleeping on, like, his sister's couch.
Oh, wow.
And he used LinkedIn to basically
promote himself
and connect with some really big thought leaders when he was a nobody sleeping on a couch. And now he's got, like, a bunch of New York Times best-selling books and a whole bunch of stuff. I'm trying to read one called The Mask of Masculinity is one he wrote recently.
But that sounds interesting.
Yeah, and so he's expanded into a Facebook talk show.
Yeah.
So it's sponsored by Facebook, and it's kind of like a 20-30 minute talk show, kind of like you would expect a talk show to be, but now it's got this weird element where he'll say, hey, leave a like or leave a comment if, right? And which kind of breaks the conversation up a little bit, which I'm having a challenge
doing.
Well, I'm having a challenge accepting a little bit to go, like, hey, if you and I were having this conversation, then I look to the audience and be like, make sure you leave a comment if this resonates with you, right? Like it's authentic, but like he's gaming the Facebook algorithm. I know that, but it's hard to. It's this weird breakup of kind of that true. Hey, I'm going to look you in the eye and have a conversation with you, and let you respond. But now you're adding that tertiary member to the podcast.
I think part of it is most probably pressure, right? Like he most probably wants people to keep coming back. 1, 2, he wants to engage people, and I agree to some degree. There is a lack of authenticity there, But I feel like most probably in his position, he most probably feels like he doesn't have a choice. He has to do it.
Yeah, he is connected with Facebook, right? So he does his little, I love Facebook,
and I'm
bringing
sure
people
Facebook
together.
are like, make sure you get people commenting and liking, on our lives, and people telling us how good the stuff is,
Yeah.
So I think there's most probably like a business arrangement where he has to sort of like cater both to Facebook's needs and his needs as well, I guess.
Totally. It goes back to my thing of like polar opposites, where it's like I understand it, respect it, and I totally will use that maybe myself, but I also kind of like reject it, right? It's it's kind of like Gary Vaynerchuk, who says he's always he's on both sides, like he's a contradiction.
He's
he's a character himself.
Guy. Yeah, he's a very fascinating guy. I've heard some of his speeches. Yeah, he's about him and his business and how it grew and all that. So,
do you have certain people that you follow?
At the moment, no, not specifically. I mean, I've listened to a few. Like I listen to guys here and there, but I wouldn't say I follow specifically one person. But I'm always like open to like the Gary. I don't know. Vaynerchuk. Like him. I'll listen to his stuff. His stuff is pretty good. He's got some inspirational stuff. I might listen to a guy, Tony Robbins, some people here and there, but like I don't follow one specific person. But if I feel like the person has an important message, I'm willing to listen and hear it out. I think everybody, if a message is well articulated and well said, most people have something good to say. So I'm always open to that kind of thing.
Totally, yeah. It's like Tim Ferriss, who you might have heard of, another big podcaster. He tries to make content that only resonates with 5 to 10% of his audience.
Yeah.
Right. He really wants that content to really resonate deep with them. He doesn't need to make his audience love everything he puts out there, and that translates into how I actually listen to him. Right. Like, Clement might listen to every episode, right? But I might have a few people listen to every episode, but other times there might be one that really catches on, and hopefully. That resonates and they take a little bit, right? You got to take everything with a grain of salt these days, unfortunately.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you have to, listen. But I mean, for me, it's like I was saying, like, I think for me, a good podcast, you don't necessarily agree with everything the guy is saying, but the guy gets you thinking, right? Like, he gets you engaged. He gets you wondering, like, does this really make sense? Why are we like
totally.
I just like that guy that gets you thinking and that gets you debating ideas in your head. You don't necessarily agree with him, but he gets you thinking a little bit.
Yeah, Joe Rogan's very good at that, right?
Yeah,
where people criticize, the guests that he has on. They're like, why are he giving such and such a platform?
Yeah.
Right? And they're like, that person is toxic or bad or whatever it be. Like, you could look at Jordan B. Pearson or Gavin McInnes, right? Like they're very, controversial figures.
Yeah, but I mean that's why, like, for me, I love his podcast because he's not afraid to talk to anybody. Even if he disagrees with the guy, he will still have him on the show. And I like that because it just makes things interesting.
Totally.
I think it's always good to have an exchange of ideas. I don't think you necessarily have to have people that you always agree with. I think it's good to have that exchange. And in a civilized way, of course. In a civilized way, it doesn't get personal. You just have a good exchange of ideas. And I like that. I think it's cool. It's fascinating. I find that very fascinating.
Yeah, and it goes back to that. You call exchange of ideas, and it's really just a conversation too, right? Like, can you, we're pushing the 35-minute mark now, right? Like, but that's because we got into a conversation versus, an interview.
Yeah, that's
right.
true.
There's a very different thing, right? Like, Yasir and you had a really good, clean. Like, Yasir had some great questions, right? And I'm never really one to do much research on someone.
Yeah.
I skim them, and then I was thinking about listening to you and your Sears podcast about 3-4 times so I could properly say your name.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, everybody gets it wrong, so don't even worry about it. It's a challenge for everybody. Trust me, even people from the same country as me, people who speak the same language as me, mispronounce it too.
But it still goes back to that idea of can you get into an interesting conversation, yes or no, right? If you need to go, you just let me know. We could end it, or we could end up talking as long as my battery lasts, right? It is what it is.
And I mean, another thing, right, is it's I don't know. Maybe you might have a different perspective on this, but I've always felt like in podcasts, you never want to limit yourself. Like, for me, I never feel like I necessarily want to limit myself. I always want to have a good, enjoyable conversation. Right?
Totally.
Like, I don't mind asking questions here and there, but I also like it to be a little spontaneous at times, just having a, clean conversation. And people can feel it. Like, the way me and you are talking now, people can feel that not everything we're saying is necessarily planned out. It's just
totally
topics that came up, right?
So, yeah, well, I think the 15-minute thing, it really did come from me, the idea of, like, Camus, I don't think, listens to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, that's true.
So, like, I'm almost having to introduce them to podcasts, and then like the idea that okay, in only 15 minutes is you can get anywhere in Kamloops. If I can just get that 15 minutes of their time on a weekly basis or a thing, maybe I can, develop the podcast sort of thing, right? But also as another young broadcaster, right? Like learning to interview someone. That is a challenge.
Yeah, it's a challenge, especially like the kind of questions you're gonna ask. For me, I try to be fair, but I also try to be honest with the question that I'm asking, right? Like, I don't want to be controversial for the sake of being controversial, but at the same time, I don't want to be, nice for the sake of being nice. I just want to find that perfect balance.
Totally.
So you can have a good conversation about things that are actually going on and happening, right?
Yeah, and I find myself walking that line too, right? Certain people I reach out to is like, okay, this is not supposed to be a gotcha show, right? Like, I steal that word from Tim Ferriss, right? We're supposed to have a conversation, but it's like, okay, I kind of know that I reached out to you because I want to ask you X, because I actually do want to know that answer.
Yeah.
But also, like, I don't want to put someone on the spot, per se, either, right? And kind of ease into it, right? Like, I don't want to have ulterior motives.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And I guess, as someone who started as journalism, as someone who works for a media agency with journalists, right, and them and I have our own battles.
Yeah.
They have issues of, Nevin, you're not a journalist. I'm like, no, but I'm just documenting. I'm not editing. Yeah. So therefore, you can take it as you will.
People actually have a problem with you for podcasting, like saying
no, they don't have a problem with podcasting. Working for a media agency, they have a problem if I end up kind of trying to create revenue streams that are kind of in tandem with journalism. You know what I mean, right? Because journalism is a weird spot right now, right? There, people, we got to figure out how to properly monetize it so the free press can exist, so that we don't have things like what Zimbabwe has, right?
Yeah.
So there has to be new revenues, and even yesterday I had someone go, I just use an ad blocker. Well, I hope you're supporting those content creators monetarily with donations through PayPal or something,
that kind of thing.
Right? Because like if the free press disappears and can't have their salaries paid, we're in trouble.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So I was trying to create some revenue streams that are open and honest, sponsored content, right? But trying to convince a journalist to write sponsored content is just a no-go. It's not going to happen, right? So,
yeah, I mean, journalism is in a weird spot. From what I'm learning and from what I'm seeing, of course, I'm sure there's more I'm going to learn over time, but I'm starting to see, like, you have to be doing multiple things. Like, if you notice, like, you get journalists that write, you get journalists that are on TV, you get journalists that are podcasting, you get journalists that are doing, like, this and that, maybe even public speaking. Like, I feel like now it's at a point where you can't just rely on your writing, and you can't just rely on TV. You have to do a multitude of things, a lot of things, right? Like, you have to be basically a Renaissance person or individual, basically, nowadays to really be successful, like in journalism. And you have to be open to working with, like, different organizations, right? Like for me, I'm learning, like, I enjoy working in CBC. If the opportunity to work with them again comes along, I will do it. But I also be open to working with maybe CFJC or some of the other radio stations in town, right? So it's just learning that in journalism, you have to be open to all avenues and working with different people, different companies.
Do you think journalism should be considered like a public good?
To a certain degree, yes. To a certain degree, no. I mean, I personally, I don't have an issue with it being private. I think you should have both. I think some companies, like CBC is public, right? Like it's a public company. The way that they do things is public, but you have other companies. If I'm not mistaken, CFJC is private, right?
Yes. Yeah. Jim Patterson Group.
Yeah. So like they're private, and then you have CBC that are the government. I think it's good to have both. Actually, it's always good to have a variety of things. You know?
Different perspectives.
Yeah. I think if you just had one government, it wouldn't be as interesting. Because you have government, then you have private. It just makes it more exciting, in my opinion.
Awesome. Well, anything else you want to talk about?
No. I think we've covered most of it, and I'm
Awesome.
sure we went over 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, we're at 40 minutes. You know, there's no reason to stop if we're having a good conversation, right?
No, it was a good conversation. I was enjoying it, and I think for me, it's just looking for opportunities. Like for you, do you what's your long-term goal? Like, do you plan on continuing podcasting forever, or is there something else that you also wanted to get into?
Well, I have a weird thing where I'll just, get highly interested in one thing for a really intense period of time, right? And so I'm just trying to focus right now on making podcasting a hobby that I do on a regular basis rather than just high intensity. Yeah. Right? So like I'm an ultra runner in the sense that I've run 250K ultra marathons.
Oh, wow.
And I'm doing another one in a couple on September 3rd.
So you train for it every day?
That's the thing. I don't train.
Yeah,
so I just go I just go up and I just run 50K, right? So like trying to teach myself to like train every day is something that it's a challenge for me to keep that moderate stuff. So I'm an alcoholic, right? So like if I bring beer home, it's all gonna get consumed, right? So I don't bring beer home, right? Like when I say I'm polar opposites, right? Like it's very part of my nature, and it's
either one extreme or the other.
Yeah, there's
right. In the middle.
I'm trying to work on the middle stuff, and so maybe medication will help with that. And it's kind of unsettling when you talk to my mother about it, and she's like, I've wondered about that, right? So because I've gone through so many different interests where for a very short period of time, it almost consumes my life, and then it just like goes to disinterest, right? So podcasting has allowed me as a medium put out what I want to, but since I get to meet so many different people, right, it still kind of conforms to that extreme, but also like is slowly trying to moderate myself in a way, right? Like to simplify and stuff. And then the running, right? Like I really do need to start training properly, and otherwise I'm going to just really hurt myself. And if it's something that I enjoy, right? Like I need to. The smoke doesn't make it easy.
Yeah, no, the smoke right now is just killing everybody. Anybody who likes to exercise, do anything outside, it's like smoke is a killer, man. It's killing everybody. Like, do you run with a group or anything like that?
I run mostly with my dog, solo. Yeah. I mixed a lot of cannabis with my running, smoking weed, and then running on the trails, only trails.
How is that? Does the weed do you feel like the weed slows you down? Does the weed give you more motivation? So what's your experience with it?
So I'm 24 hours sober from weed now. Yeah. So I quit weed because of the medical stuff that I'm going through. Yeah. But again, it goes back to that polar opposites where like there's weed that like either slows you down, the indica couch, right? Yeah. Or you have sativa, which is the energy weed. Yeah. Right? So like I will smoke sativa and then like within 5 minutes, like I'm bouncing off the seams and you can't stop me. I can go from no training to just running 16 kilometers and having a grand old time, right? So I did that intensely back fall of 2016, and then I just like got to like December and then just stopped running, and then signed up for some races, just went out and raced them, right? In the spring or summer, right? So it doesn't really slow me down as people would expect, because I have run 50K on 3 hours sleep stoned before. Oh, wow. But was that smart? Probably not. And am I doing that again? No, but like it's again, it goes back to that bipolar stuff, right? And there is, a hybrid of the mix of the two, the indica and the sativa, that I ended up kind of self-medicating myself to like trying to get that like, slow myself down, but also let myself sustain, right? And through hybrids, I've been able to kind of get to this point where, now I do have professional help. Or I'm in the process of getting professional help, if that makes sense, right? To moderate myself, because I clearly, like you said, I'm either on or off, like two extreme opposites.
Wow. I mean, yeah, no, I've never tried that one, like the weed and the running. That one must be fascinating. That must
It's
be.
that I justified it myself because there's runner's high, right?
Yeah.
You naturally have an endocannabinoid system,
Yeah.
and you know if you run long enough, your runner's high could kick in, right? And then you can just you feel like you're flying on a cloud. So I would justify the smoking weed and going for a run by being like, oh, I'm just artificially kicking in my endocannabinoid system so I can feel like I'm running on a cloud.
Yeah. It sounds. Hey, I'm actually. Maybe one of these days I'll conduct an experiment like that. That just sounds fascinating. Like,
Well, it's not for anyone.
I
Different tokes for different folks.
Because
right?
some people would like prefer to go clean and like be like, oh, I'm gonna go 100%. Like I've been to the gym, like I've gone to the gym a morning after I was drinking. Let's say like Saturday.
Yeah.
The days I've gone to the gym on Saturday afternoon after like I was drinking late in the night before. And when you go, like for me, when you start off, you're like it's a little slow. But
Yeah.
once you get into it, like it's just like the usual, right? I don't know if it's because I'm still young,
Yeah.
and my body can still recover quicker,
Yeah.
right? But it's fascinating to see what weed does, right?
Totally.
Because if weed isn't as bad as alcohol, right? I'd love to just see like the effect of it when you
Oh,
exercise.
it's totally not. I started drinking when I was 18 at a rafting resort, and I did that exact thing where I would drink till 1:30 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
I would put my fingers down my throat, force myself to puke so that I could be sober for
So you could
8 in the morning the next day to work.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was wondering why you'd want to do that. Because usually, when you get drunk, you can just go to sleep. Like, you might even sleep it, right? But
Yeah. No,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
it was a fun two summers, right? But, it was enough for me, right? I've done some weird, interesting stuff in my past, and I imagine you've got weird, interesting stuff, and
Yeah, I mean-
everyone's got weird, interesting
Yeah, I
stuff.
mean, I like especially like college, right? Like for a lot of us in college, we're still experimenting, right? Like for me, like I've experimented with both weed and alcohol. Like I try to moderate myself a little bit.
Yeah.
Like I keep it to weekends. So for like Friday, Saturday, like tonight, like I would drink like tonight and Saturday. That's it.
Yeah.
Occasionally Sunday, but most times I try not to. So I would say maybe Friday, Saturday. And then Sunday to Thursday, I'm sober and clean. And then Friday, Saturday,
Yeah.
because I always feel like you need to relieve a little bit of that stress.
Yeah.
Like you can relieve stress by going to the gym. You can relieve stress by drinking, smoking weed. I have friends who smoke weed every day.
Yeah.
And like I have no problem with that. That is what they do. But I think people like need to relieve themselves. And I think for me, I've always preferred. I'd say I would prefer liquor over like weed, even though most probably liquor is
Yeah.
bad for you compared to the weed.
Yeah. But I think as soon as you start crossing over that your rules of weekends only, right? Like because I even told my wife not even like 2 weeks ago, oh, I'm just gonna smoke weed on the weekends.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, it's Thursday night, like it's basically the weekend. Oh, it's Monday.
Yeah,
oh, I need this, right? Like
you have to. Like I've been in positions where I was tempted. Like I've got friends, and they're like, "Oh, there's a hangout going on. Yeah, you should come with us, right?" And you
Yeah.
go with them to the hangout. And everyone's drinking, like everyone's having beer. Some people are having weed. They're like, and when you're at like a hangout, right? Everybody wants to like they want to make sure everybody's included. Like
Yeah.
if you're the host, you want to make sure everybody's included. So they're gonna offer you like a blunt, like
Yeah.
they'll be like, do you want some, or do you want a drink? And like for me, I found myself in positions at times like thinking about it. Then I'll be like, no, I can't. I gotta go to work. But the temptation is always there. Like you're right about that. Like
Yeah.
it's very like
yeah, like
you have to be
I
careful.
I took
It's a
like
fine line.
I quit smoking weed so I could get my girlfriend, who eventually became my wife,
Yeah.
and is now the mother of my daughter, right? So I quit weed to make that happen. I stopped drinking for a year. I'll do like things like that, right? Like to reset myself, whatever it be, right? But it's some people, it's different tokes for different folks, right? And
Yeah, that's true.
and you have to when someone does try and pass you something, hopefully they respect you enough to go no thank you. I appreciate the offer,
But I mean, like a lot of people, like sometimes they don't understand it, right? Like I've actually been like to people, now not tonight. I gotta work tomorrow or something, and like it's like I can see it on their face, like in their mind. It's sort of like they're wondering why I don't want to take it, want to drink what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Like, but they did like it's almost like they don't want to say it out of like politeness or respect. They don't want to say it, but I can see in their mind they're wondering why I'm not interested, or why I don't want to drink or smoke at that point in time.
Yeah, and college. Yeah, I think. I learned a little bit of this from college, right? Coming from someone who didn't really touch this stuff before, I think that, that's, you're all of a sudden you're in a culture where, excessive is okay, is kind of a horrible way for people to learn how to, properly respect, these mind-altering substances, no matter what they are, right? And I think even if you asked me that, few months ago, whatever it be, right, I would have given a completely different answer. And it's constantly evolving. I think it's part of the social fabric that makes college special, right, is you have that stuff. And I think it's interesting that TRU is prohibiting cannabis use once it goes legalization. So people smoke now, they're going to smoke then too. Like, it's not going to change.
Because by law technically you can do whatever, right? But that's interesting. I actually didn't know that. So like, TRU is telling people no cannabis whatsoever? Like, they're not changing it despite the legalization of it?
Yeah, so, like, my understanding is where the designated smoke spots are if you have a medical card, right, which means you need to have a doctor give you a prescription for cannabis. You can then smoke it. But, like, recreationally, you cannot smoke it on campus. Right, but you can still smoke cigarettes or drink alcohol, right? So there's some public outrage, and there was some incorrect information provided by some TRU
professors,
who said something about secondhand smoke, which cannabis it doesn't happen, right? Like it's only in extreme circumstances, right? So it's a little bit interesting in that regard, where educational organization has been documented by the local news organizations saying incorrect stuff, right? And I think that's where, journalism's super important, right? Like, if I say anything incorrect, I want someone to correct me on it.
Yeah, like we all, like, we don't know everything, right? Like, as people, I know some people will act like they know everything, but no one knows everything. Like they say, no man's an island.
Yeah.
And so no person knows everything. Like, sometimes we all make mistakes when it comes to that kind of thing, right? But when it comes to that weed stuff, it's such an interesting topic.
It totally is. There's lots of information on it, but there's also not enough information on it, right? Yeah. So, like, my wife has been encouraging me to quit for. And I promised her when the baby came I would quit. No, I was daily when the baby came.
Like for you, what do you find difficult? Like, do you feel like it helps you cope with things, or like?
Yeah, like I was finding myself.
If you're stressed out, or if you're dealing with a lot of stuff, do you feel like it helps you deal with depression and that kind of thing?
Yeah. Like it lets me like focus at times, but it also like lets me like. I don't know, just zone out. Like it different strains, right? Like, part of the problem is like getting the right product at the right time, right? Because you might get something great one time, but then it's the wrong one the next time, right? So, like, my wife ended up having an emergency C-section, right? And 3 weeks ahead of our planned C-section. And I found myself leaving the hospital every day to go home, smoke.
That must have been tough.
And then go back, right? Yeah. And I was justifying myself of like, hey, I need this short break, right? And so I'd go home and smoke a bowl, and then go back to the hospital, and it was a troubling time for me, because I also didn't really like acknowledge really I had a daughter for like probably the first month too, right? Like, so it was a little bit like, hey, this is going on, but I couldn't even like look my daughter in the eye, right? Like, you could look at my eye contact through this conversation. It's been good at times and bad at times, right? So like, it's I don't know, like it's just something that I found a craving for, where I would wake up at 6 a.m. and be like, okay, yep, it's gonna happen, right? But it is a self-medication, right?
But I mean, I can see how, because like, you know, like when you're either inebriated or you're intoxicated or you're drunk or high, it's like if it's almost like it relaxes you, right? Like it almost makes everything feel a little bit better. You don't feel the stress as much.
Totally.
Like for me, like you know, let's say like there'll be like there are nights where I'll drink, right? And I mean, obviously, I'm not gonna drink excessive amounts, but I'll drink enough, and then it just makes me feel like I forget about my problems. I forget about the stress, the issues that I'm dealing with. It's like it takes a weight off your shoulders a little bit.
Yeah.
Even if it's temporarily, it helps.
Well, yeah, for me, like alcohol, like it kind of builds and builds. Like you feel good after those first three, and then like, okay, by the time you get to six, you're like, okay, I'm good. But then like it starts having a hard taper off. With cannabis, for me, it's almost like, oh, I can just top up. I can just top up.
Yeah.
Right. And
oh yeah, because with weed you do need to keep. Because I know with alcohol there's a limit.
There's a limit.
You reach a point maybe where you might black out or you don't remember. Or there's a point where you know, yeah, I can't take anymore. Whereas the weed, after a while, it does wear off a little bit, and then you need to get that high back, right?
Yeah, like you can green out, right, which is where you consume so much that you pass out and people will actually puke up what they have, right? So like that is a legit thing that happens.
Yeah.
Or you can get extremely paranoid and just have like intense anxiety, you know, and I've experienced that, of course, as well, right? But like, you know, I think part of feeling intense anxiety from weed, for me, I got over it once I just stopped giving a shit if, you know, sharing that I smoked weed or whatever it be, right? Like it was that stigma associated with it, like, oh, the cops are gonna come, or you know, oh, my wife's gonna know, or whatever. I mean,
a lot of people do it to cope, right? Like
totally.
I'm sure like a lot of successful people who run businesses and business corporations, like people do it that, like a lot of it helps people cope. So it's always interesting when people sort of judge one another, like, because I think we all, you know, like, we all have skeletons in the closet, right? We all have things that we're dealing with that we don't want others to know. So it's always fascinating when people maybe judge you for the love of it and the inability, like, maybe to control it at times.
Yeah, and to the flip side, like, you know, the CBD side of things, you know, cannabidiol, or how you pronounce it, right, is definitely the more interesting side of things, right? To, you know, instead of maybe someone having a cigarette to deal with stress, they could have a CBD cigarette, which has no psychoactive, or they don't get high off of it, right? But they can still get the calming effects or whatever it be. And there is, you know, some really interesting science of people getting the effects of THC without the high and all that sort of stuff. So I'm interested to see what happens after, you know, the 17th, right? But I think for me at this point, it's I've always looped my doctor into my smoking, and you know, I've never been advised to really stop. They've kind of let me.
So with weed, there are no adverse effects at all, right? Because I mean, I know alcohol is usually liver and that kind of thing. With weed, no adverse effects
you know
at
what?
all?
I would have said weeks ago, oh yeah, it's been linked to psychosis and you know, schizophrenia and that sort of stuff,
that.
and you know, you really shouldn't put smoke into your lungs no matter what, right?
Yeah.
So that's where, like, you know, edibles are really a safer way of doing things, but you could also, you don't know how high you're going to get until really like 45 to 2 hours after you eat them.
No,
so
I mean, edibles can, like, the little experience I've had with edibles can really, like, they can, like, wear you down. Like, the few times I've had it, I've just, like, maybe it's because of the ones I had, but it was like I was low energy, you know, just didn't feel like doing anything, just fell asleep.
They're difficult to make like a consistent thing, right? And that's kind of why you know, I support dispensary so much, because they've been able to make more consistent products.
Yeah.
And the products that I've tried have been remarkably consistent, and I can guess the effects that I'm going to have and when it's going to kick in, and you know what I can do, and you know and that sort of stuff, right? And so, you know when I was running, you know, a lot of time I was using edibles because I could have a better chance of guessing, right? But then the smoking side of things, you know, if you just need the quick instant, you know, smoking's the better one, right? Because you count 15 minutes later, you're definitely high.
Yeah, I've noticed. Yeah, like a lot of people I see, like, they just prefer the smoke. It's just like, because with edibles, like, for me, like, I notice, like, it's easy to underestimate them. Because, like, for instance, you know, you can go to Sun Medicine, right?
Yeah.
And you buy, like, a pack, and whatever, you have, like, one chocolate. And then you're like, I'm not feeling anything.
Yeah.
You have another chocolate. You're like, there's nothing. You have another. Then like
you
2
gotta
hours,
be patient.
Yeah, exactly. Then 2 hours later, it's like, whoa, what's going on? Like, this stuff is so strong.
Yeah, and like I was sharing some edibles with a friend, right? And what I would consider a fine dose for what I do, it was way too much for him, to the point where he was doing like 1/16 of what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I consider that a low dose, and by even talking to like someone at a dispensary, that's a low dose.
Yeah.
But for him, it was just so intense, right? And so, it's kind of unfortunate that there's not a lot of information really out there, and that there's just this like, hey, 10 milligrams of edibles is one dose, which is true. But for this, my friend, like 10 milligrams was literally 4 times too much,
Yeah.
or whatever it be, right? And so it'll be interesting to see what happens on the 17th in how the government approaches it. Like, that's why edibles actually isn't going to be legal.
Yeah.
Right? It's only.
I was actually going to ask you, like, how come, like, like with legalization of marijuana, right, in Canada, I've heard like you won't be able to go to dispensary and buy stuff. Is that how true is that? Like, I'm trying
Well, the dispensaries right now are all in the gray area.
Oh, okay.
Right, so
like they need a permit.
Like this is where I bet you're best off directing you to what journalists have written. But my understanding of it is basically everyone who has a dispensary right now is taking a gamble of whether or not they will be able to win a proper marijuana license come the 17th.
Oh, okay.
Right, and in BC, there's going to be a mix of government and privatized dispensaries.
Yeah.
Kamloops is going to have the very first government dispensary just over by Save-On Foods on Sally Center.
Oh, so just like this area close to Safeway.
Yeah. So that's
yeah.
where the dispensary would be. It's where the old dollar store used to be. So that's going to be a government one, but there's going to be other private dispensaries, which, there's nothing confirmed of who's going to be actually the ones who get to win, right? I was just chatting with someone, literally, they emailed me last night going, hey, Nevin, we're trying to get the right permits and stuff, right? Like, we're not sure if we can do anything just yet because we don't know what's going to happen in a month and a half, right? So it's in this weird purgatory where, like, no one really knows. And the media have been really great at kind of keeping us up to date on stuff. Like, Kamloops Week just ran a front page article last Friday about technically smoking weed on the sidewalks isn't outright outlawed yet, right? Yeah. Like, if someone reads through I'm not sure if it's the bylaws or the laws or the way the federal government or the provincial government is doing stuff, in theory, it's legal as of right now on the 17th of October to light up a joint on the sidewalks and smoke it.
Yeah.
But take that with a grain of salt, because really you're only supposed to be consuming it at your home.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
So, like, it's in this weird thing where, like, as legalization comes, there's just so many different parties involved that it's hard to get a really clear story, and that's why, like, it's so important to have the press to try and make the clear story.
Okay.
Right?
So yeah, a lot of gray areas, I don't understand why they don't just legalize the whole thing, right? Like just legalize the whole thing.
Well, the edibles thing is because they want to be able to, like, if someone says this is 50 milligrams, you have to be able to deliver it, right? Like.
So they want to be they concerned about accuracy.
Yeah, basically, it's difficult to test the accuracy of what's an edible. Like, I read or watched a Vice, the media outlet, thing about testing, like, Toronto dispensary edibles, and their tests found they have a third less actual THC than they were claiming, or whatever be, right, in that particular items that they tested. So it's just really difficult to have the consistency,
Right.
and so that's not why they're going towards it.
Okay.
Just yet. Where flower, it's much easier to kind of get the test and figure it out, but it's, I don't know, cannabis is such a personal thing,
Yeah.
that it reacts with so many people in such a variety of different ways that even with the laws and stuff, it's difficult, right? But you'll have to remember, like, when you get a thing of Molson Canadian, it's 5%.
Yeah.
It's not 4.6. It's not 5.2. It's 5%, right? Like it has to be that accurate, and that's why
it's not always, and it's not always that way, right? So that's why the government feel like they need to control that and just make sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's weird that they feel like they need to control it now that it's illegal. But how come, like, before it was illegal, they just it was like whatever.
Yeah. The difficulty being is I've heard some very smart people. Now, I sound like Donald Trump. Someone who works for the Trichome Institute, I think he's in like Oregon or Washington or something. They tried to grow the same plant under the same conditions, just 1 mile apart, and got two different plants in the end, right?
Yeah.
Like cannabis, it's not like you can just make the exact it's not like beer where you can make the same formula and get the same beer tasting exactly the same and have all the same. Like it's a living organism that there is lots of research, but there isn't a lot of research, and so it's hard to replicate stuff even under perfect scientific conditions. They're getting different plants, so I respect the cautiousness, but I also it's been helping people for decades and decades, and I don't know. I really don't know where I feel on things at this point, right?
Yeah, it's just it's a fascinating topic. I just wanted to hear about that because I heard about the legalization, but I wasn't sure about the specifics and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and they're as published as they can be, and they're constantly getting amended because the federal government has given the province opportunity to make their own rules, right? So here's the federal rules, here's the provincial rules, and then there's also like the civic rules, right? Like the three bodies of government can all have their own different say. Yeah. Where right now, like the city of Kamloops is deciding on what a business license for a cannabis dispensary can be, and it looks like they're going for $5,000, where a liquor store is only $1,600.
Oh, wow.
Right? So, like, why is there that discrepancy? But
I mean, it's like, I guess because alcohol has been around for longer.
Yeah.
So people have always been more, for some reason, people have always been, like, more accepting of it. It's weird. Because even, like, in my home country, like, there's talk of it. Like when it comes to weed, we're, like, miles behind, like, Western civilization. But, like, there's even talk of it. Like, people are sort of discussing it. But it's like everyone's looking at it as bringing in weed is like a gateway to drugs, cocaine, heroin, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like when it comes to alcohol, like everybody's so accepting, like alcohol is just a normal part. Like it's bad for you, but you can't stop people from drinking. Yeah. But when it comes to like weed, for some reason, like people have a different look on it.
Totally.
It's very weird.
Way more inhibited. I can't say the word. I have less inhibitions when I'm drinking.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and that's where people say, "Oh, I was drunk. You can't take what I said seriously." Or I didn't mean to do that. I was drunk. Right. Like that's kind of unfortunate. Right. Like, when people are stoned, they just forget stuff. It's not like their inhibitions are really gone. Right.
Yeah. No. The double standard just is weird to me. Like, why can't you just equate it? Why isn't it just the same? So.
Yeah. No. We're definitely an interesting time right now, and I think that's why it's interesting to have conversations like this.
Yeah.
Right, and the opportunity for just the average person to kind of put their opinion out there and hopefully stand behind it and really just be genuine and kind of chat. And I appreciate you chatting. I'm gonna end it around here.
Yeah, no, I was about to. I also have to go.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed it. It's been a good conversation. It's longer than expected, but it just happens. It got good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you once again, Dairai.
Dairai.
I'm sorry.
It's all good, man.
I'm sorry, Alvin. I appreciate you meeting with me.
And then thank you for having me. I enjoyed
yes.
this one.
Yeah, and make sure you listen to Yasir and Alvin chats, on a previous episode of Cameo, or find it on Yasir Khan Social Mastery. I think he's putting things up on Anchor now, because Yasir's got a lot of great things to say, and so really love for you to check that out as well. And awesome, thank you so much for the cookie. Common Grounds just provided us with coffees and a cookie for our little podcast. So thank you so much. And till next time, I'm sure we'll have more great conversations there, Alvin.
Thank you for having me, man. I enjoyed this one.